Well, welcome everyone. It's John Cheplack with Interrupt the Pattern, and I am excited to bring to you an interruption of inspiration. Today I am with Ryan Hodge. Ryan Hodge is broker owner, co-founder of the realty firm. He is a father, a family man, a fitness freak, and here to share his amazing story. How's it going, Ryan?
Very well, very well. Honored to be here.
So we were able to carve out some time in between 37 hockey games over the last 7 days. How's it working?
The hockey is certainly busy. We are in a rink every day until Christmas.
Good grief. Well, as I get to spend so much time up there in Canada, I mean, I just admire the passion and commitment. I mean, it is a lifestyle. So, well, let's just jump right in. My purpose here today is to share the journey of people. We've all had a journey. We've all are constantly on a journey. And, we come to spaces and places when we have experiences and along the path and say, things just aren't how I want them to be. And I want to change. And I had the privilege of starting to work with Ryan. Gosh, I think I counted out about 40 weeks ago, and Ryan appeared. And talk about Ryan when you showed up. We started chatting probably about 6 months prior to actually engaging and working together. And talk to everyone about where were you at? What were you experiencing in your life, when we first started having our dialogues?
Sure. Well, I mean, when we first started talking, I had read your book once. That was our initial conversation. A friend of mine turned me on to your book, and I knew that you had some pretty serious real estate background as well. So I didn't really know what to expect when I read the book. But there were a few things that really resonated with me, specifically in the balance space.
Hmm.
So, I touched base with you, and then I read the book again, and I think I read it 3 or 4 times before we actually decided to start coaching together. Um, but for me, it was a place of being unbalanced. I had been through another banner year of work, and I had just woken up January 1st, earlier this year, and just said something's not right, something's out of sorts, seeking something more. And was looking for something a little bit different from a coaching perspective and an overall experience.
And so when we dug in, what I do is certainly we start out with a questionnaire, and you come forward with the things that you wanted to change. What were the critical areas for you? Because one of the things that you and I talk about all the time, and as you look at the many people that you coach and lead and look to expand on that, which I'm excited to share with people later on in our interview, the work that you're going to be doing in that space. But ultimately, when you came forward, what was it that you knew? There was just something telling you this needs to change. What were the areas that you wanted to change?
I think the number one thing was personal responsibility.
Oh, that
Looking
one.
at
That one, huh?
that was a big one. And that's where, you really peeled back the layers or assisted me in peeling back the layers of that in all areas of my life.
Mm.
We started out, and I didn't know what to expect. I was looking at it from a balanced perspective of home and myself and, the people, places, and things that I was surrounding myself with. And we started out into the physical space. And that was an excellent exercise in personal responsibility and making, the right choices and then making the next right choices.
Mhm. And let's talk about that. The physical thing is so deceiving to people because we see this result that shows up. Talk about the invisible factors that go into, you know, that nutrition path and the fitness path. The mind and the heart. I mean, you've tested your heart and your soul on that journey in the fitness and nutrition path. Talk about that because I think that people really miss that point.
I think the number one thing that it does is it just leads to a level of productivity in all areas that aren't just for business, but it's a self-serving behavior
Oh,
versus a self-centered behavior. So, I always was an athlete and played sports, and I was a captain of the football team in high school, but I never really took fitness that seriously. And as I got into my 30s, it certainly caught up to me. I was definitely overweight and too high a body fat percentage for my age. And ultimately, by going into that realm, it just led to amazing things in other places. My mood, my marriage, my energy levels at home with my children, being a better business partner. Like it just leads into everything positive when you start your day in that space. At least it does for me.
Well, and it's what we've talked about a lot, that spillover effect. Share, where were you at physically and your activity, and where you were at with your nutrition, and then fast forward it to where you're at today in current space and time, so people can hear about this trajectory and this commitment and the process that you've chosen to do.
Sure. Well, when we started, I checked back just the other day. I was 197 pounds. So 197 pounds. I'm 5'9", sometimes 5'10". Probably clipping in at about a 25 to 28% body fat level. No sense of good nutrition. I could eat or not eat, but I certainly wasn't putting the right things into my system. Definitely drinking too much. Not a major problem with alcohol, but it wasn't serving me well. And, it was just a place where I was working out, but periodically, not doing any kind of a consistent training program, and even trying on and off with trainers, but having absolutely no result. So fast forward to now, this morning I was 160 pounds. I've had to buy a whole new wardrobe. I'm currently trying to and committed to eating 6 meals a day, usually a protein, carb, and a green in each one. That's a challenge, but I'm committed to it.
Mhm.
No alcohol whatsoever in my space, and that's just my path.
Well, that was
And
interesting, Ryan. When we started out, and certainly it's no mystery that I'm a recovering alcoholic. And as we record this, I was 7 years sober in July, and certainly I support that either way. But remember when we started out, you had asked me, what should I do about the drinking, and I said, well, you should, do what you want to do. And I think we were a couple weeks in, and you were heading to Mexico, and these old places and spaces where it's just normal to have a cocktail or and drinks when you're on vacation. And I said, well, it's up to you. I think what you need to look at is, what's the upside of it, and I'll leave it at that. And then what did you end up doing on vacation?
no drinking.
Hmm.
No drinking. I asked myself the same question, and it was a lot harder at the start. But I just kept saying that to myself. What higher purpose does this serve? And I couldn't find an answer for myself.
Right, right, right. So, and I think the thing that's real important, though, in this is certainly that there was some guidance in the beginning, but the true guidance then comes from you back to me as we walked along this path, because what's important is not to tell someone what to do, but to share with them, what to do, give them some guidance, but then for you to go out and test. And what I'd like you to do is share what you've learned about fitness, what you've learned about nutrition and your body, and share that with folks too, because it's real easy. People can think, well, I need this person, and certainly, I've got coaches in that area myself too, and I'm certified in nutrition. But talk about what you've learned, also, I think, and what you continue to learn in that process.
Sure. Well, I mean, it started out, and we started with the nutrition. You gave me the nutrition at the start.
Mhm.
I didn't follow it to a T. And that's really the place of, coaching. I mean, coaching versus training. You coach rather than just give information. You facilitate an accountability process. And as we went through that, I learned that, as much as I was starting to do the workouts, and there were high impact intensity training workouts with very little cardio, and I was starting to see some results, the better feelings associated with the workouts were great, but it led me to wanting more from an overall physical perspective. And that is where the nutrition really came into play. And as I moved away from not even just eating clean, where, I wasn't eating fast food or anything like that, but I was following a proper nutrition plan that was built for, the level of workouts that I was committed to and the overall goal of where I wanted to be fitness wise. Well, that came into play as well with just my overall sense of feeling. And when I started learning about, the types of proteins or the types of healthy fats to eat,
Mm.
even those small choices made a drastic difference, and they continue to do so. And, as we head towards the end of the year and I'm starting to look at, new goals, well, I know that we're going to have some new challenges and commitments in that space as well.
Yeah, well, and what's neat is, gosh, I think I really committed. I don't think I know I committed to really to this fitness and nutrition thing about 7 years ago. And when I got sober, I said, you know what? Kind of like you, it's interesting how we appear in each other's lives. It's all or nothing, which has its duality. But here we are, 10 months later in the process, and I think we were texting back and forth yesterday. And I said, you know what? I need you to just load up on the fats, go over the top on avocado. It's a constant trial and error to see how every body responds differently. And I'm still learning, and it's constant, and it's discovery, just like every other part of life. So let's go into, we talked about the physical, and certainly the physical is important, but we also recognize that it's a mindset. It's an inside out process. The body will go wherever your mind decides to take it or not take it. Let's talk about on a personal level. You talked about personal responsibility and the experiences that you've had in your life, the experiences that you are continuing to have. Talk about that growth. What have your discoveries been? What's the initial work, the pieces that you had to take a look at, do a self-examination of, which is the scariest thing for any human being to do. Talk about that progression over these last 10 months.
Well, I think that the number one thing in this process was an identifier of I had very little foundation in, personal responsibility, or, we talk a little bit about spirituality, and I had none of that. I was a latchkey kid growing up, so, there was never any real foundation for that, even to reference against. And ultimately, that's where we had to go backwards. I mean, we had to look at how do we peel back layers, or look at the cords that we're connected to that aren't serving us, follow that backwards and cut them out.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, for me, it led me right back to, where we indicated it would go, usually a place in childhood, place of being powerless. And I know a lot of people have different stories in that, but I believe it usually comes back to that, and looking at how that is serving us in the present time. And for me, it was more about examining just how I ticked, what was getting me to do the things that I was doing, whether it was, alcohol, or whether it was escaping to work, or whether it was, inappropriate choices. In any of it, it was looking at all of that, peeling back the layers, and identifying where I need to make changes.
Well, we had talked about it, I think, in our initial chats, and we continue to, is I term it maybe a non-academic way, is, Ryan, let's walk backwards. Let's walk backwards. And as you know, I mean, I'm walking backwards on a daily basis with my 3 coaches that I have guiding me. A teacher that we both follow. I'd like to expand on some of the different resources that you've reached out to too. Is Esther Hicks talks about that post-manifestation process. Walking backwards and looking at what was the experience, what took place, what created this program that I have right now, and then where did I choose, and what choices am I making now? I think it's that peeling back the layers. We're so afraid to be exposed because of how we're supposed to look. And the interesting thing is, you take a look at, as you continue to grow and have an amazing year, and certainly there's learning along the way. Um, but the magic is when we take a look at those painful. Gary Zukav said this, and he's another person, of course, that you've followed too. Is that when we take a look at those secrets, that are holding us back, and we suppress them down, we suppress them down, we suppress them down. They're going to show up. They're going to show up in ways that don't serve us when we don't want them to. Talk about when you started really just facing those pieces.
Well, I didn't get it at first. I still remember I'd ask you over and over, what do you mean by this? Or what do you mean by that? And, you know what?
Now you're such a doggone reader researcher. You're telling me.
Well, I think that you gave me a really good example. I believe that I was asking you a little bit about alcohol at one point, and whatever it was something that you said to me where I was trying to push it away, and you said you let things ride very close. And when I started looking at that, it refers a lot to what Debbie Ford talks about with the beach balls and letting them float rather than suppress all of them.
Yes.
Because I'm an excellent suppressor at some of those things, and when we do that, eventually it's going to explode to the surface.
Yes. Yes. Well, and let's talk about that. We talk about our relationship that's has its history and is ongoing as we go. But the most important thing is, and as I've shared before, I'm just a facilitator and a vessel that passes through what has been so selflessly shared with me. And we talk on the phone 30 minutes a week, and certainly text in between as I stay in contact and chat. But there's 100 plus hours a week that we all have to journey through our life, and it's we can feel good in that space and get the information, but then it's after that 30 minutes or whatever it may be. If we're in a seminar or something, it's going out and taking action. What you did is take some action. I'd like you to share with people the work that you've done, the 6 days and 23 and a half hours in the rest of the week. Talk about rituals, talk about the action steps that you were just and continue to be unwavering on. Who did you reach out to for greater knowledge? What great teachers and books that you can share with other people that have served you, continue to serve you, and can serve them?
Sure. Well, the number one book that I followed after reading yours was Gary Zukav. I read his Seed of the Soul and Heart of the Soul books, which really resonated from a standpoint of looking at external circumstances versus authentic power, and just being aware that we can't control what's going around outside of us, that we need to take responsibility and control what's going on inside of us, which leads to a whole energy awareness platform as well. Debbie Ford was huge for me. She continues to be. I read The Shadow Effect based on your reference. And then I went right into all of her work. The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, did her online shadow process. And then I started getting into even more of the manifestational series. Jerry and Esther Hicks or Abraham. I'm big followers of that work. And a whole bunch of others. I think that it's been such a great part of this, as far as not having any idea about, this type of work, and then enjoying the reading and enjoying the process and moving out of a grind to get by or a grind to learn about it into more of a flow and a joy of learning. And it's inspiring.
Well, and I want to share a couple things just to reiterate, and I think that it's being articulated very clearly, but I want to restate it, is the commitment. We want a magic pill, and you can get the magic pill, but you've got to continue to do the work, commit to the process. I'd shared with you, and you restated the fact of, I keep things close to me. One of the things I was taught was keep that last drunk buoyed on the horizon, meaning be sure that you can see that, you can feel it, you can sense it. And we're taught, push it away, or we're programmed to push it away. Well, the minute that those pieces drop below the horizon, we're screwed. I mean, we keep it front and center. And the other piece is too is just to continue to do this work. One other piece that you didn't share is, I mean, your commitment level is so high. You flew down to Chicago for Esther Hicks' 2-day seminar also, and attended that during this process, correct?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, no, it was fantastic. My wife and I went down there a couple months ago and got to see her in a room, which was an amazing experience.
So what's great is one of my coaches in the business area that I've worked with, Frank Kern. He always says, I'm not all about the kumbaya and stuff. I'm about, you got to work. You got to get the numbers and all that stuff. And it's interesting. I'm in the numbers games. I do budgets, performance, projections with large organizations, and one on one with people. And we see the grind, and I talk about the flow, and people talk about putting their energy and all of this commitment and discipline, which are really, really important. But let me ask you this question, because certainly we've walked this path in the business space. We've had an event where there was a room that needed to be filled. You have a real estate company that you are continuing to grow, exponential growth in a short time frame. And so now I want to move away, and Frank Kern's a legend, and he's brilliant, and I'm not about the kumbaya. I'm about, what are the numbers, let's get it done. And I'm like, well, I'm about the flow. Most everyone, and I guess everyone's maybe not the right term to use, but many people listening to this know you, and know me, and they know the results that you have delivered. They're undeniable, and you continue to deliver. How often in the last 10 months, whether we were doing an event that we need to get people to show up for, or whether it was recruits, or whether it was sales or anything, how often did we talk numbers?
Zero,
That was like never,
zero,
never,
never, never.
never. And how let's talk about an event. Let's see that you're in a marketplace with what? How many real estate agents? 1,500 real estate agents?
1,500, yes.
1,500. Population base is 350,000 in London, Ontario.
Correct.
And you're this independent real estate brokerage firm, hovering close to 100 agents, and decided to do an event for the real estate community, rented out a big room. And, again, let's go back to it. At that point in time, you had about 70 agents in your company. What was there, 280 agents from other companies as far as 100 miles away that showed up for that event?
Yes. Yeah, we had a fabulous turnout. It was one of those things where we were able to, serve and support the people that we knew inside of our company. And of course, that's our number one priority as business owners. But we also were able to bring people in from out of town that we had great relationships with, or that followed you a little bit, or followed us as far as, from our real estate careers, and a whole bunch of other great people inside our local marketplace that may or may not be considering a change, but they certainly saw the value in coming to our event. So it was a fabulous day.
Yeah, so let's kind of bring all this stuff together. We're talking about flow, and we're talking about great effort people put in, and versus almost a space where we let our soul take over. It really becomes effortless. But let's look at how all this crosses over in I guess commercialized law of attraction. It's so overused, and it's not a negative thing, but I'm not here trying to capitalize on that. But let's talk about this. What started to appear when you started down the personal path. See, it's interesting because we're so seeking, the next magic pill, the thing outside of us, and what we focused on was, okay, that's going on outside. Let's go deeper inside. Talk about the people. talk about the experiences, talk about the things that have started to show up in your life, in your circle, and also drill down into that part of it too, the challenges of making a change and choices you've had to make. I mean, there's a lot in there, a ton.
I think that when we start to take personal responsibility, that everything is our choice, that we're not blaming others, whether it's from the past or current, spaces, whether it's a business relationship, a personal relationship, it's all choices that we make as individuals. And when we move on down that path, which is full personal responsibility and taking 100% responsibility and accountability for every choice that we make, we start to look at cleansing and clearing those things that do not serve us. And you've talked to me a little bit about silos in the past, as far as, the silos that we have that are full of, poor programming or things from the past that don't serve us. And when we start to clear those silos out, we start being able to receive the things that serve us well. And that's what we've done.
Well, and it shows up over and over and over. I mean, you're sharing with me all the time the people that show up. I want to go into, what is an interesting space, and I'll say it. I mean, the biggest thing that I remember Amma, who's my co-author of Interrupt the Pattern and has been my guide for 7 years. When she first met me, I was about 3 years sober. I was introduced to her as a spiritual guide and someone to support me on my path. I was out on the big island of Hawaii. She picked me up and said, and dropped me off at my hotel, and then we were going to meet and do some work. And she called me later and said, "I can't work with you. Your ego is too much." And I'm like, "Listen, I'm 3 months sober. I'm clear. I'm doing the right things. I'm out here trying to do the right thing. She's wrong." And then I stopped and I paused and I said, "No, she's right." And this has been my pattern, and it's continual work. I mean, we never arrive, but where I want to go to is this space, and really I want to serve the dads, the husbands, the fathers in this, because I think that we really can. Society has this programming of the man card that we've got to carry, and we've got to look good, sound good, play the part. And I think you've had some real discovery. Not to say that you were that guy, because you've got a great humility about you. People just genuinely like you. But I think that's an area that you've really looked at and identified personally, continue to. But also, what's important is some of the other. You've kind of given a permission for other guys to step forward, and say, "Hey, I want to go there, but it's kind of uncomfortable." Talk about that piece, the transparency, putting away the man card. Ego versus the masculine and the feminine, that type of work.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, ego was, I've been there, and I bought that T-shirt 100,000 times.
I got a collection for you, bud.
As a husband and as a dad, we're not always going to be perfect. That's just a certainty. But I think it's important to be aware of the choices that we make, whether it's on a physical level, a business level, or a spiritual level. Mm-hmm. And that's where you get into responsibility, and it's a self-serving responsibility that's going to support the family. But I think sometimes we get it backwards. I think that we have to, oftentimes we think that we have to support our families, or we have to do everything for our spouse and children before we serve ourselves. Okay. And ultimately, we find ourselves in a pretty nasty spot, or we can be, and I know that I have in the past.
It's conflict. We're walking a path of conflict.
Absolutely. And when we look at that conflict, it can lead to, nasty things, whether it's alcohol or drug abuse or, inappropriate relationships, whatever that looks like. If we're not working on ourselves and focusing on a pursuit of awareness in everything that we're doing, that can surface very quickly, and it has for me. And I think that there's a lot of men that it is going on with, women too, of course. But when we look at self-serving behavior, whether that's fitness, whether that's church, whether it's something that needs to be done, that's where it starts. But it's our own responsibility to do it. And just like we can't, ask others for it, we can't blame others for doing it either.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and to take that a little bit further, because it's one of those, many may be listening saying self-serving. Well, wait a minute, that sounds like ego. No, it's not. Because the thing to really look at is when we aren't functioning at our highest expression of self, in our health, in our spiritual path, in our mindfulness and our awareness, we're not bringing our full self forward. And so what I want to state to everyone is this: is self-serving has the greater good in mind. I know I have many great friends and women I work with that, they're, whether it's their fitness or other things that they do that inspire them and fill their heart, their soul. I mean, they're just committed to it. Nothing gets in the way because they know that when they're filled, then they can bring their greatest expression of self forward in all of their dealings. And I think that's the piece to really challenge people to. I think on another level too is, talk about transparency. What has transparency done? And I'm not talking about for you. I'm talking about the people around you. You being open about your journey, you being open about your challenges, and yet at the same time sharing your victories. Because there's another piece there too, where people are, we've all got a ministry. And if people would share it, some people are, oh, that's bragging. That's, don't worry about what people think. Share your path, because all that matters is the one or two people that it does affect. The other ones that are sitting there, the peanut gallery. Listen, when people stop talking about you, stop worrying about it. So talk about transparency in your discovery of that, and how you walk that path on a daily basis, and what has the result been for other people because of your transparency.
Sure. Well, when I started, it's almost like you want to keep things bottled up and you want to, keep it to yourself. But as you start to move to more of a transparent space, it's amazing the people that, might not put themselves out there as much as I do, or, or others do, but the people that appear that are facing real life challenges and don't know where to turn and are just looking to make some changes. It's an abundance of people right now. Whether I get an email or a Facebook message or a phone call saying, I see that you've made some changes, and I've got this going on, or I'd like to do some changing of my own. It's amazing, and that's where the real reward is. I mean, you get to serve and inspire others, and not necessarily from a deep, dark place, but I believe it makes us better leaders too. I'm fortunate to serve and support people in a real estate company with my business partner, but when you can inspire them and lead them on a different platform, a platform of personal responsibility and making choices in some cases, I believe you get a better result with your employees as well, and a better relationship all in all.
Well, and we talk about this, and you get it. We're not in the real estate business. We're in the human resource, human development, human behavior, human attraction business. And so when we come to understand that, then we can flow much easier, instead of, this, okay, what's the next magic pill? How do we grind? Grinding is not an inspiring process. Certainly with respecting confidentiality of people, because what's really neat to see in such a short time frame from when you decided to make some changes. um, I'd like you to go through a little bit of a self reflection, but self appreciation too, in a specific way. Share some of the things that people have messaged you because of. See, because here's what I want people to really get is, when we step forward, there's nothing more rewarding than certainly we've got to take care of ourselves. But then when people say, what, because of that, because of this, I saw you do this, here's what's changed in my life. And I know that already in a short time frame from the point you've made the change to here we are now. Talk about some of the messages that you've received from people. I mean, share the different pieces, people reaching out, so that they can know that, the really neat thing is, because we all have a desire hardwired into us of contribution. We may not know it, but it's down there. And so there's a twofold benefit. You get to change, but you get to contribute. Talk about some of the people that have come forward and shared with you, what they've gained from watching your path.
Sure. I've had friends, family, coworkers, colleagues, people that I don't know well, but maybe might follow the story a little bit online. They've reached out on all levels. They've reached out on, wanting to transform themselves physically. They've reached out having struggles with drug and alcohol abuse. They've reached out on, marital issues. They've reached out on other major, addictive challenges. They've reached out on business and how to grow a business. They've reached out about coaching and interrupt the pattern. And they've reached out on an overall sense of well-being and how to get there. I think sometimes, in social media, things look perfect. They're not. They're certainly not for me, even though, we put ourselves out there. But I think that they find that, when they can resonate with someone that's real, that's telling a real life story, that maybe they've had some challenges, that they've, aspired to a better path, then they're raising their hand saying that they may want to do the same. And that's the reward. The reward is being able to serve someone else the same way that you've served me and the same way that your guides serve you, I'd imagine.
Sure.
That we're serving others, and there's no better reward. You serve and support others, success is never an issue.
No, it comes back. I mean, it just comes back tenfold. I mean, that's just that is the simplicity of it. It is the simplicity of it. Um, Taking a look at, I think, what happens is when we make this choice to change, to seek a higher vibration, a higher frequency, a better experience. It's happiness, freedom, and joy of life, as we talk about all the time. It seems, and I was told this, when I started, John, okay, here we go. You're going to go on this ride. You're going to be challenged like never before. You're going to think it was easier when I was living the other way as these challenges appear. Talk about that as you started to make the choices, and not so much some of the specific challenges, but what did you encounter? Did life get easier, or was it, whoa, wait a minute, where's all this coming from? What's going on here? And how you've worked through it and continued to um, work through this process while life still happens, but doesn't happen to you anymore.
Well, it's interesting because when you start this kind of process, whether it's alcohol or whether it's, escaping to other people or to work, your circle will change. There is no doubt about it. And I don't judge, but I think that sometimes people don't want to take a good look at themselves. So when they see others making changes, they might shy away a little bit. Not that friendships end necessarily, but things will alter. And that's a unique place to be, especially when you come from, a circle of friends or family that you're seemingly very close to. When that starts to shift a little bit, you are definitely on more of an inward path. And at the start, I wasn't necessarily as comfortable with it. I'm completely comfortable with it now because I know that's what serves myself the most and the crucial people in my life that I need to serve and support as well. But aside from that, the movement goes away from it being work and a grind to a flow. And even when we talk about it, I remember, the first few months of this, I was talking about it and I was excited about it, but I wanted to show others. And there was that whole, seeking validation from others, which I've always, had the knack of trying to do.
So good, yeah, yeah.
And eventually you move to a spot of peace and freedom and expansion and joy, like you said.
Mhm.
And it's not like it's perfect and it's not like it happens in 12 weeks and it's not like I'm always there, but I am in a way different spot than I was 10 months ago. Way
Well, I
different.
think I'll go to another, and I don't know if I may have mentioned it in passing, but Malcolm Gladwell talks about our programming. It's a black box, and we're like a black box in an airplane. We've got these recordings. The plane goes down. It tells us exactly what took place, and we've got our black box inside us that are old tape recordings. And I think the thing that you've demonstrated in your walk and on your path is you continue to re-record over those old recordings, and that's the piece that people need to get is, re-record over those old recordings, but then also there's this understanding and knowing when you get personal responsibility, then the next part of it is, okay, here it comes, it showed up, what's it here to show me, and how is it here to evolve my soul? And it's not that we're um, I don't know, hardened to it, but it's attachment is one of our greatest challenges in learning detachment from an outcome and attachment to the process. You know, speak to that piece a little bit. We're in a business where you're leading commission based people, and certainly it's sales, and you're in sales yourself. Talk about that fine line that's so challenging for people of really just attaching to the process and detaching from what is an outcome based world.
Well, that's ultimately where I went through a full place of self-discovery in this process because I was constantly attached to a result. Whether it was, when I was younger and, playing a sport, or whether I was in a relationship, or, whether I was in a career, I was always attached to the result and the next thing and the next thing. And life starts to move pretty quickly, and you start to miss a lot of the good stuff when you're always attached to that outcome. You're not enjoying the process, let alone even detaching from the result. So learning to attach to the process, but even more so enjoying the process, has been just a huge game changer for me.
Mm. And what appears?
Abundance.
You did a second event in London that, what was that, last month, I think it was. You open it up to the real estate community, and I think you've got this 100-miler thing going. You've got people that travel 100 miles to things that Ryan is hosting, and that was by purpose, by design, a smaller event. And how many people showed up to that event?
We had 200 at that event.
And that was what, a month or 6 weeks after the one where you had 350 people show up.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Well, and that's where good things start to happen, right? We cleanse and clear things, and we detach from the thoughts and programming that doesn't serve us, whether it's business or whether it's in a relationship, or whether it's something like alcohol or drug abuse, or whatever that might be. When we detach from those things as well, we're opening ourselves up to receive.
mm,
And it's in a different way than grinding to get it. It's in a way of just letting it happen. A laser focus to the activity to get there, and an awareness to being there. But the results that come when we do that are beyond measure.
you so nailed it, Ryan. And I've got to jump in there because it's the point that so many people miss is they get into the vision board and the business plan and all of these affirmations and law of attraction, and I'm going to bring it and I'm going to make it happen. But the thing, if you want to go back to the law of attraction, the point that many people miss, this declaration, and I've shared it before, public declaration equals manifestation and reprogram. But you nailed it right there, and I think it's why that you've been able to be so successful in you've always been successful, but in a different way, in a flow, is you came to understand right away that you got to be prepared to receive. Doesn't matter how clear you are. If you're not prepared to receive, and I'm talking about who you are, what you do, what you stand for, nothing's going to happen, and you're going to be in that grind.
Well, we're going to sit in that lesson until we learn it too, right?
Well, I say this: the soul's brilliant. They talk about alcohol. With characters like me. Listen, alcohol's patient, man. It's still there 10 years, 15 years later. If you get a little bit comfy and think you can have no problem, alcohol's there and it's going to come back with a fury. Well, the soul is brilliant. And that's the beauty is, we've all got good. We've all got that goodness in us, that higher self, but we just don't we've got to take that time and get that awareness to open that channel to allow our higher self to talk to our conscious self. Because, and if we don't, ain't no problem. It's the pattern. The soul's patient, and people think, oh, this keeps happening to me. This keeps happening to you. No, the soul's just trying to talk to you. You got to listen up, man. Otherwise, listen, it was a circus for me for 20 years. Hello. I get it. What, looking at, where you started, where you're at today, and where you continue to move to, what is some advice that you would share with people that, and let me really articulate, no matter how big of a challenge or how little of a challenge, something people are embarrassed about, something that causes them pain, because guess what? Everyone listen here, we've all got it. We've all got our stuff. But more importantly, though, too, looking at the desire for something different and something better, this knowing that there is something different or better. And you and I, we don't talk about stuff. We talk about experiences. If you were to say, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, here's what I know based on my experience and what my suggestions would be that have worked for me and I see continue to work for other people. What would you share with everyone?
I would share that it's so important to take a good look at ourselves and to do a personal investigation of the self if we want to get to something different. And not everybody can do that on their own. Some are better than others at that. And sometimes we think that we make these changes, but we really haven't. Whether we were, a drug addict, and I mean, I had issues with drug addiction in my 20s, whether that's switching to alcohol in my late 20s and, different relationships, or escaping into work in my 30s, it will be repackaged and brought to your attention every single time until we make those changes. And sometimes when we need a little bit of guidance or assistance or somebody to facilitate that experience, my advice is to raise your hand and reach out to somebody to try and seek that help.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, we all need and I sit here as a coach and I don't say, so give me a call. I mean, give Ryan a call. Just get a third party observer. And I'll restate it again. It's not that I'm wonderful. It's maybe that I'm not that wonderful and I need all the guidance. I have 3 people that I talk to from a space of guidance on a weekly basis. Because we need that third party observer. It's challenging. One of the things that we coach and we talk about constantly is stepping outside of ourselves. And that's not easy. Stepping outside of ourselves, living in personal responsibility. In other words, owning every experience. It was taught to me, Ryan. I think I told you the story. If I'm sitting at a stop sign and someone rear ends me, whose fault is it? And it's my fault. And we've sat in training rooms for hours and debated that with a self-directed work group. Sometimes 2 and 3 hours, people debating that until people come to understand that you were there, so you're responsible. Or are you going to choose to walk a path where when you think about it this way, well, I'm only going to own certain parts of my life, but the other parts I'm going to blame on someone else. Well, then you can't create this life that you desire when you walk that path. It's so simple.
Absolutely. We create all of our own experiences.
So let me kind of move into a different space that I think will really serve people is, everyone's looking at, what's my purpose? What's, figuring out, I want to be this, or I want to do that, or I'm unhappy here or unhappy there. And talk about what this has moved you to. I mean, when we started this process, it was about, I want to move to my highest expression of self. And obviously your footsteps have shown it and continue to. But now it's evolved into, not by some vision at the beginning of it, but it's what's shown up. This desire to serve and support other people. You went through and I love what you stated, because I see it when people get started, and it's that discovery of the ego of, oh, okay, well, I want people to see that I'm doing this. Oh, wait a minute, that's kind of ego. I just need to stay in the work. And you start to navigate and understand, just walk my path, people see, and then share responsibly. Well, now it's moved to a point where you've got a crystal clear vision of what you're going to be doing, and you've actually started to do kind of under the radar, but you're going to come out with it strong in 2016. Talk about the vision that has manifested for you in your expansion of your purpose, or maybe I should say a real clarity of your purpose in the work that you're going to be doing in 2016 and beyond.
Well, I've taken so much joy throughout this process as well, believe it or not always easy, but I've taken so much joy in the process that it's inspired me, especially as people have started to raise their hands and, come forward with some of their own challenges to do the work as well, and to, assist others in reaching their higher path.
Mhm.
I've been fortunate to coach people, usually under the radar on a business level, but I find this work is the most rewarding. Helping people to make some changes that they didn't necessarily know how to make. And it's, again, not that I'm doing any work for people, but I'm showing them a place of discovery that they're making changes that serve themselves better.
Yes, yes. Well, it's a borrowed belief that you're giving people. It's a borrowed belief. So, where can everyone find you, Ryan? Websites, phone numbers, emails. Give people all of your details, because the one thing I know is certainly you've got a wealth of knowledge and experience, and a desire to serve. Where can they find Ryan Hodge?
You can reach out anytime. You can call me on my cell phone. It's 519-859-5408. Again, that's 519-859-5408. You can also email me at ryan@therealtyfirm.ca, and I'll be launching my new coaching website shortly.
Good. And then, of course, the wonderfully successful company that you have. I think you guys are you guys tops in your marketplace in per person productivity, or somewhere in the tops?
Yeah, the last numbers we checked, we were right at the top for per agent production across all brands. This month's numbers, I don't think they've been released yet, but we're making some traction for sure. We're growing to a really healthy place, and we continue to grow to with good people. But the biggest reward, even with that, is seeing people succeed with a different system, not necessarily being better, but doing things a little bit differently and having fantastic success inside of our small marketplace.
Sure. And the company website is therealtyfirm.ca.
That's right.
Therealtyfirm.ca. So, anyways, well, anything else before we wrap up here, Ryan?
No, I need to express some gratitude towards this process, towards you, towards your book. I think it's always important to practice grace and gratitude, and I will be forever grateful for our experience together.
Right on. Well, thank you. It's the cliche that the teacher is the student, and you have been a great teacher for me, and I'm excited to see what else unfolds as the journey continues. Thanks so much, brother. Love you a bunch, man.
Likewise.
All right. Talk to you soon.